Don't get me wrong, Michael's a good guy. Stable job, decent haircut, always remembers my birthday, kind of. But lately, good guy, feels like the participation trophy of marriage. We haven't had a real fight in, like, forever. It's all beige walls and lukewarm coffee. Where'd the passion go? Then, bam, David walks into a work conference looking like a GQ model come to life. Funny, charming, with eyes that could melt glaciers. We ended up networking until the bar closed, swapping stories and laughing way too loud. Back at the hotel, I snuck into my room, heart pounding like a drum solo. My phone buzzed. It was David, a text message teasing about my killer dance moves. Stupid? Maybe. But it felt good to laugh with someone who saw me, not just the wife in khakis and a ponytail. That night, sleep became a distant memory. I traded texts with David until dawn, the playful banter turning flirty, then downright suggestive. This wasn't networking anymore. It felt like danger, maybe even a little exciting. The next morning, guilt gnawed at me like yesterday's burnt toast. But back home, the beige walls and Michael's predictable routine felt suffocating. I needed an escape, a splash of color in this monotonous life. So, I started small. A new lipstick, a flirty dress for work. Little things to remind myself I wasn't just Mrs. Michael anymore. Then came the late nights. Heavy workload. I'd tell Michael, my voice laced with fake exhaustion. He'd just nod, never questioning. Easy target, I thought with a pang of something, maybe shame? But David's texts were a thrilling secret, a world away from Michael's snoring and reruns. I was getting tangled in a web of my own making, and a part of me knew it wouldn't end well. But for now, the thrill of the forbidden felt too good to resist. Dinner with David was electric. We snuck away from the stuffy conference after party, finding a hidden jazz bar with dim lights and even dimmer whiskey. The conversation flowed like the smooth bourbon I was sipping, punctuated by David's easy laughter. My phone buzzed, Michael. Ignoring it felt like a tiny rebellion, a secret thrill that shouldn't have been exciting. Work's running late. I texted back, my fingers flying across the screen. David's gaze met mine, a knowing glint in his eyes. We talked for hours about anything and everything, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. He complimented my new dress, a figure-hugging number I'd bought for this very occasion. You look incredible, he murmured, his voice husky. Compared to Michael's mumbled, looks nice, it was a symphony. By the time I stumbled back to my hotel room, the guilt was a dull ache in the pit of my stomach. But nestled amongst the crumpled receipts and lipstick stains was a memory of laughter and unexpected connection. It was a dangerous high, and I knew I shouldn't chase it. Yet, part of me craved more. Back home, the routine felt suffocating. Michael, bless his oblivious heart, was excited about a weekend camping trip he'd planned. The thought of being trapped in a tent with him for 2 days made me break out in hives. I faked a headache, claiming work deadlines. The disappointment in Michael's eyes was a flicker of pain, quickly replaced by his usual easygoing nature. He offered to help with the work, oblivious to the irony. I brushed him off, retreating to the spare room with my laptop and a churning conscience. Every notification from David sent a jolt through me, a welcome distraction from the guilt gnawing at me. My credit card bill arrived a few days later, a stark reminder of my new spending habits. The dresses, the dinners, the secret rendezvous, it was all adding up. I stuffed the bill in the back drawer, a silent promise to deal with it later. Denial felt easier than facing the truth. Michael deserved better, but the thrill of the forbidden, the feeling of being desired, was intoxicating. It was a dangerous game, and I was playing with fire. But for now, the heat felt good. My stomach lurched as Michael glanced at my phone over dinner. David had sent a hilarious meme, and a snort escaped me before I could stop it. Michael's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, just work stuff," I mumbled, shoving the phone into my purse a little too forcefully. It felt like a spotlight had suddenly been switched on, revealing the dance I was doing on a tightrope. Later, alone in the bathroom, I deleted the message with a practiced ease. Each notification, each deleted message, was a tiny betrayal, another brick in the wall I was building between Michael and me. The guilt gnawed at me, but so did the excitement building for the weekend. I'd booked a last-minute work retreat to a charming bed and breakfast, a lie that sat heavy in my stomach. The hidden suitcase in the back of my closet mocked me. Lingerie, a new dress, everything screaming, weekend getaway, more than work retreat. Michael deserved better. He deserved a wife who remembered his birthday, not one who forgot and scrambled to buy a generic card at the last minute. The disappointment in his eyes was a punch to the gut, another casualty in my web of deceit. Packing the hidden bag felt like prepping for a heist, a thrill laced with fear. Would I get caught? Would this secret weekend with David be everything I fantasized about, or something else entirely? Part of me craved the escape, the chance to feel desired again. But another, quieter part, whispered warnings I desperately tried to ignore. Pushing the doubts aside, I zipped the bag shut. The excitement was a fragile flame, and I clung to it, ignoring the growing inferno of guilt threatening to consume me. Don't worry, Sarah's covering my shift, I lied to Michael, shoving a suitcase into the trunk. My stomach twisted. Sarah was on vacation, and work retreat was a flimsy excuse at best. But the thrill of the stolen weekend with David overshadowed the guilt. The drive was a whirlwind of nervous excitement. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a mix of fear and anticipation. What if something went wrong? What if Michael found out? The bed and breakfast was charming, all exposed beams and crackling fireplaces. But the magic quickly faded. The stolen moments with David, while passionate, felt hollow. The guilt was a constant shadow, lurking at the edges of our laughter. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted, emotionally drained. Michael, bless his heart, had made dinner. The sight of him, a beacon of normalcy in my tangled web of lies, filled me with a strange resentment. How was the retreat? He asked, his voice laced with a hopefulness that hurt. Stressful, I lied again. Late nights, endless meetings. My voice trailed off, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. He didn't press me, and the silence felt deafening. Curling up on the couch, I felt miles away from Michael, despite sharing the same space. My phone buzzed with a text from David, a cheerful reminder of the weekend's deceit. Looking at Michael, his kind eyes filled with unspoken concern. A wave of shame washed over me. Here I was, comparing him to David, highlighting his flaws and downplaying everything good about the man who'd been my rock for 5 years. The excitement of the affair had dimmed, replaced by a dull ache of regret. The stolen weekend had left me feeling empty, a stark contrast to the comfort and security I took for granted with Michael. But stepping back from the brink felt impossible. I was trapped in a web of my own making, and the thought of unraveling it terrified me. Needed to talk, needed someone who wouldn't judge, someone who'd get it. So, I spilled the beans to Sarah over lunch. The words tumbled out, a messy confession about stolen weekends and secret texts. At first, Sarah's face was a mask of shock. But as I elaborated, a flicker of something else crossed it, maybe excitement, maybe a touch of envy. She didn't judge, not exactly. Instead, she peppered me with questions, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. He's everything Michael isn't, right? She said, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous understanding. The truth stung. David was exciting, spontaneous, everything Michael wasn't. But suddenly, hearing it out loud made it sound less romantic and more like a cliché. Still, Sarah's support, twisted as it was, felt like a lifeline. Having a secret keeper was a heady mix of thrill and fear. It was pushing the line further, blurring the edges between innocent flirtation and full-blown betrayal. Back home, the beige walls seemed to mock me. Michael, bless him, was oblivious. He'd put on a few pounds lately, and his hairline seemed to be retreating further with each passing year. Everything that used to be endearing now felt like flaws to be nitpicked at. Dinner turned into a minefield of arguments. He commented on my new top, bought specifically for David, and I snapped at him for not noticing my effort. The evening spiraled into a familiar pattern. Petty digs, hurt silences, and a cold, empty feeling that settled in my stomach. Another work conference, loomed, the perfect excuse for another stolen weekend with David. This time, packing the bag felt less like a heist and more like a routine. The thrill had faded, replaced by a dull ache of guilt and a nagging fear of getting caught. But the thought of facing Michael, of his quiet acceptance and predictable routine, felt equally suffocating. I was trapped in a dance with two partners, a tangled web of my own making. The second, work conference, weekend was a far cry from the first. The stolen moments with David felt forced, the passion replaced by a hollow ache. We talked, but the conversation bounced around like a deflated beach ball. The excitement was gone, replaced by a nagging suspicion that maybe, just maybe, this forbidden thing wasn't all it was cracked up to be. On the drive back, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. A simple text, "Everything okay?" It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, sharp and unwelcome. Lying about the weekend felt more burdensome than ever. The usual thrill of getting away with it was gone, replaced by a heavy weight in my chest. Every lie, every secret felt like another brick in a wall I was building between myself and Michael. Back at home, Michael's smile seemed a little forced, his usual cheer replaced by a quiet sadness. It was a subtle change, but it felt like a punch to the gut. Was he on to me? Did he suspect something? Dinner was a strained affair. Conversation came in stilted bursts, punctuated by long silences. As Michael cleared the table, his hand brushed mine. It should have been a familiar touch, a comfortable moment. Instead, it sent a jolt through me, a reminder of the tangled web I was in. Later that night, David called. He was different, too. The playful banter was gone, replaced by a forceful urgency. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice tight. "Leave him. Start a new life with me." The idea of leaving Michael terrified me. The comfortable life we built, the shared memories, the familiarity, it all felt fragile, like a sandcastle threatened by a rising tide. But the thought of facing Michael, of seeing the hurt and disappointment in his eyes, filled me with dread. David's words echoed in my head, a fresh start, a chance for passion. But a nagging voice inside whispered a different truth. Maybe passion wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Maybe what I was chasing wasn't happiness, but a way to escape from a life that had grown stale. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the nightstand. The silence of the room pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. For the first time, I wasn't just scared of getting caught. I was scared of what I might actually find if I dared to stop lying. Sarah was my lifeline, the only person who knew about the mess I'd gotten myself into. So, the next day, I spilled it all again. The hollow weekend with David, the guilt gnawing at me, and the terrifying idea of leaving Michael. "Maybe this whole David thing is just a fantasy," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly serious. "A way to escape feeling stuck in your life." Her words stung, but a tiny spark of truth flickered within them. Was David really the answer, or just a shiny distraction from a deeper problem? Part of me wanted to cling to the fantasy, to the promises of a passionate new life with David. But the thought of facing Michael, of the hurt and betrayal in his eyes, made me want to crawl under the covers and never come out. Sarah's voice cut through my fog. "You need to end it, your name, before it destroys everything." Her advice was like a cold shower, a wake-up call I desperately needed. But ending things with David felt like jumping off a cliff, the ground far below obscured by swirling mist. That night, Michael surprised me with dinner reservations. Candles flickered on the table, casting a soft glow on his hopeful face. It was a desperate attempt to recapture a spark that had dimmed, and it ached to see him trying so hard. I choked back a sob, forcing a smile as I thanked him. The charade felt suffocating, every bite a lie caught in my throat. My phone buzzed on the table, a silent scream. It was a text from David, a casual message laced with an urgency I couldn't ignore. Panic surged through me, a cold sweat prickling my skin. Michael noticed the tremor in my hand, his hopeful expression faltering. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I opened my mouth to lie, but the words wouldn't come. The weight of my deception was a crushing burden, threatening to shatter the fragile reality we'd built. Looking into Michael's kind eyes, A decision flickered to life within me. It was shaky, uncertain, but it was a start. Maybe there was still a chance to salvage what we had. Maybe the spark wasn't gone, just buried beneath a mountain of lies and neglect. Taking a deep breath, I knew what I had to do. But how? Where do you even begin to untangle a web of deceit you've woven so tightly? My heart pounded like a drum solo in my chest. Dinner with Michael felt like a ticking time bomb. The guilt sat heavy in my stomach, a lead weight dragging me down. I needed to end things with David, but the words wouldn't form. Then, my phone buzzed. Seeing David's name on the screen was like a slap in the face. Panic surged through me. I mumbled an excuse about a work emergency, my voice tight with barely suppressed hysteria. Michael's confused frown added to my churning stomach. Rushing to the bathroom, I slammed the door shut. My fingers trembled as I dialed David's number. The second he picked up, I blurted it out, "We need to stop. This isn't working." Silence. Then, a tirade of angry words from David, his frustration a sharp contrast to his usual charm. The illusion I'd built around him started to crumble, revealing a possessiveness that sent another wave of panic crashing over me. Hanging up, I leaned against the cold tile, gasping for breath. The lie to Michael about the call felt like a flimsy bandage on a gaping wound. Every time I opened my mouth, another lie seemed to tumble out. Back at the table, Michael's hopeful smile had dimmed, replaced by a quiet sadness. The rest of the dinner was a strained affair, punctuated by awkward silences and forced conversation. Later that night, as Michael reached for my hand, I flinched. The simple touch felt like a betrayal, a stark reminder of the web of deceit I'd woven. He withdrew his hand slowly, his face etched with hurt. The next day at work, a single red rose sat on my desk. A note from David, his handwriting all flowery promises, felt suffocating instead of romantic. What had started as an exciting escape now felt like a cage, a trap of my own making. Sitting at my desk, a wave of longing washed over me. I missed the simple moments with Michael, the shared laughter over a silly movie, the comfortable silences that spoke volumes without words. The life I'd built with him, the familiar rhythm of our days, suddenly felt precious. The rose on my desk started to feel less like a symbol of passion and more like a glaring reminder of the mess I'd created. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix things. But how do you even begin to rebuild trust, piece by shattered piece, when you've broken it so badly? Lunch with Sarah was supposed to be a break, a chance to escape the suffocating weight of my lies. But the second I saw her face, the dam broke. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I blurted it all out. The affair, the guilt, the regret that gnawed at me like a hungry rat. Sarah didn't judge. Instead, she held my hand, a silent anchor in the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "You need to tell him," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The longer you wait, the worse it gets." Her words were a punch to the gut, a truth I desperately wanted to ignore. Facing Michael, the man I'd hurt so deeply, filled me with a dread so heavy it felt like I was wading through mud. The thought of losing him, of watching our life crumble to dust, was paralyzing. But the alternative was worse. Living a lie, constantly looking over my shoulder, was slowly eating me alive. I craved honesty, even if it meant facing the music. That night, as Michael settled on the couch with a book, my stomach churned. Taking a deep breath, I sat beside him. The words caught in my throat, a tangled mess of apologies and justifications. "Michael," I finally croaked, "we need to talk." He looked up, a flicker of hope crossing his face before it was overshadowed by a wary uncertainty. My voice trembled as I confessed everything. The stolen weekends, the desperate search for something missing, the crushing guilt that followed. Each word felt like a shard of glass tearing through me, but with each one, the burden lessened. As I finished, a heavy silence descended. Michael's face was unreadable, a mask of emotions I couldn't decipher. Was it anger? Hurt? Disappointment? The silence stretched on, each tick of the clock an eternity. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Why?" The question hung in the air, a simple word carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken accusations. There were no excuses, no justifications. All I could offer was a broken apology and a silent plea for a second chance. Looking into his eyes, I saw a flicker of the love we once shared, buried beneath a layer of hurt. Whether it was enough to rebuild what I'd so carelessly broken, I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to salvage the pieces and build something stronger, something honest. From the moment Marco steps into our lavish New York City apartment, I know I'm playing with fire. But hell, the thrill? Unmatched. Alex is off on one of his business trips, probably thinking I'm home knitting or something. Little does he know, I've got Marco here, making my heart race in ways it hasn't in years. After Marco leaves, I'm on my phone like a CIA agent, deleting texts, calls, any trace of our little rendezvous. I'm confident I've covered our tracks perfectly. Alex, with his head always buried in work, wouldn't notice a thing. Or so I thought. Alex surprises me, coming back early, arms laden with gifts and this big plan for a surprise date night. It's like something out of a cheesy romance movie. He's all affection and smiles, and for a moment, I feel a pang of guilt. But it's fleeting. I'm too deep in this game now. During our date, my phone lights up with a message from Marco. I dismiss it with a nervous laugh, but I catch Alex's eyes on me, a shadow of doubt flickering across his face. He says nothing, though. Alex, the ever-silent observer. It's in this moment I realize he might be onto us. But then he smiles, and I convince myself it's just my paranoia talking. A few days later, things start to feel off. Alex's behavior shifts. He's more withdrawn, pensive. I overhear him on the phone, talking about unusual behavior and requesting comprehensive surveillance. My heart drops. He's not just onto us, he steps ahead. The day he confronts me, it's with cold, hard evidence. Photos of Marco and me, timestamps, locations, the works. He lays them out in his study, and I watch as his heart breaks in silence. Mine does too, but for different reasons. I've been caught, and the game's up. Alex's next move? Consulting a divorce attorney. He's planning meticulously, thinking about his next steps with a precision I hadn't expected from him. It's like he's a different person, one who's not going to let me off easy. I realize then that I've underestimated him, and the gravity of my actions begins to sink in. This isn't just a fling gone wrong. It's the unraveling of our lives together, and for the first time, I'm scared of what's to come. The second Marco suggests a weekend getaway, my heart leaps. Just the break we need, I think, ignoring the nagging voice in my head, reminding me of the web of lies I'm weaving. Telling Alex I'm off to help a friend in crisis. I see a flicker of something in his eyes. Pain? Suspicion? He masks it quickly, nodding and offering a week. Take care. His facade almost has me fooled, but there's a chill in his goodbye that I've never felt before. As I'm whisked away to a secluded beachside retreat with Marco, living in a bubble of bliss and denial, Alex is back in our New York City apartment, diving into a world I've underestimated. He's not just sitting around. He's on a mission. Accessing our financial records, he meticulously documents every asset, every penny in our name. It's like he's preparing for war, and here I am, unarmed and unaware. By the time he starts shifting our assets, moving money to accounts I didn't even know existed, I'm too caught up in my weekend of deceit to notice the ground falling away beneath me. Alex, the man I married, the man I thought would be forever tied to my side, is entangling our lives with a precision that's both terrifying and impressive. Returning home, the air feels different. Alex is there, his presence like a ghost of the husband I knew. He's quiet, too quiet, and while I tell myself he's just tired, deep down, I know something's off. His usual warmth is replaced by a cold distance, and for the first time, I start to question if my actions are catching up to me. But then, life seems to resume its normal pace, or so I think. I continue my affair with Marco, emboldened by what I perceive as Alex's ignorance. He's none the wiser, I foolishly reassure myself, not knowing that Alex has transformed into a silent architect of my downfall. The report from the private investigator lands in Alex's hands, a detailed account of my betrayal. He reads it, each word a hammer blow to the remnants of our marriage. Yet, He stores it away with a calmness that belies the storm brewing within. He's documenting everything, building a case against me with a meticulousness that would have once been reserved for our future plans, now used to orchestrate my demise. And there I am, blissfully ignorant of the avalanche I've set in motion, continuing my dance on the edge of a volcano. My affair with Marco isn't just a secret fling anymore. It's the catalyst for my unraveling, a testament to my arrogance. Thinking I'm untouchable, I fail to see the walls closing in, the ground shifting beneath my feet. Alex, the man I believed would always be mine, is plotting a future where I have no place, and I'm too caught up in my own deceit to see the end coming. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Just when I think things are getting back to some twisted version of normal, Alex drops a bombshell, not the explosive kind, but the sneaky, slow-burning fuse type. He's chatting with a real estate agent, all casual like he's planning a weekend barbecue, not discussing selling our lush New York City apartment, just exploring options for a fresh start, he says, his voice a little too nonchalant. My stomach knots. A fresh start from what? Then, like a scene from a detective movie, I stumble upon a brochure for swanky new apartments on the kitchen counter. My mind races. Is he planning to leave me? But Alex, ever the smooth talker, brushes off my panic with a wave of his hand. It's just for a potential investment, he assures me, and I want to believe him so badly that I do. My suspicions are eased, but there's this tiny voice in the back of my head whispering liar. Fast forward a few weeks, and Alex is moving stuff out of our place. Not blatantly, but I notice a missing book here, a pair of shoes there. He's like a ghost, slowly fading from our home. He's secured a new pad, just for himself, planning his great escape. I catch the address one day, scribbled on a piece of paper that slips from his pocket. My heart sinks. It's real. He's leaving. At a dinner party we host, Alex is Mr. Perfect husband on the surface, but there's this edge to him, watching me like a hawk. I can feel his eyes on me every time I laugh too loud or too long with someone. It's unnerving. Then, damn it, Marco decides that's the perfect time to text me. My phone lights up, and I laugh it off, but Alex's silence is louder than any confrontation. He saw, he knows. The next thing I know, Alex's attorney is drafting divorce papers. The terms? Let's just say they don't favor me. At all. It's like he's aiming for a clean sweep, taking everything we've built together because of my infidelity and financial deceit. It hits me then. He's not playing around. He's out for blood. Feeling backed into a corner, but still clinging to a shred of invincibility, I decide it's time to come clean. He'll understand. I tell myself, he loves me too much to let this ruin us. So, I confess, laying it all out there, framing my affair as a mistake, a blip in our perfect life. I expect anger, tears, maybe a dramatic showdown. Instead, Alex just listens, quiet as the grave. When he finally speaks, his voice is calm, but there's a chill to it that freezes my blood. He's not the forgiving type, not anymore. I've underestimated him, and as he talks, outlining the consequences of my actions, I realize the depth of my folly. Alex, the man I thought I knew, the man I believed would stand by me through thick and thin, is gone. In his place as a stranger, calculating and cold, ready to cut me out of his life completely. And there's nothing I can do but watch the life I knew crumble to dust. The moment Alex slides those divorce papers across the kitchen table, it's like my whole world tilts on its axis. I've known for months, he says, and the way he looks at me, I can't tell he's not the man I married anymore. He's a stranger, cold and calculating. The papers are crisp, formal, a stark contrast to the messy, emotional turmoil churning inside me. I'm shocked, not just by the revelation but by the depth of my own naivety. How did I not see this coming? The divorce proceedings kick off like a meticulously planned military operation, with Alex at the helm, steering the ship directly into my worst nightmares. He's armed to the teeth with evidence of my infidelity and financial trickery. I try to fight back, scrabbling to rally support from our friends and family, but Alex's narrative is watertight. One by one, the people I thought I could count on drift away, their eyes filled with something between pity and disdain. In court, my lawyer looks like he's fighting a losing battle against a tsunami. Alex's evidence is overwhelming, and with each piece presented, I can feel the ground slipping away beneath me. It's not just a legal defeat, it's personal. Alex has turned my mistakes into an arsenal, and he's using it to destroy me. When the judge finally rules in Alex's favor, citing my infidelity and financial misconduct, it's not just a blow, it's a wrecking ball to my life. I'm left with next to nothing, stripped of the assets we built together, the apartment, and a significant portion of our investments. It's like I'm being erased from my own life, left with the scraps of what used to be a lavish existence. The fallout is immediate and brutal. My social circle evaporates overnight. Friends I'd laughed with, shared secrets with, turn their backs on me, siding with Alex. The evidence he'd compiled paints me as the villain in our story, and they buy it without question. I'm isolated, a social pariah, navigating the wreckage of my life alone. In a last-ditch attempt to find some semblance of comfort, I reach out to Marco, but even he's slipped through my fingers. He's moved on, dismissing our affair as nothing more than a temporary diversion. The realization hits me like a punch to the gut. I was just a game to him, a way to pass the time. So here I am, standing amidst the ruins of my life, a life I thought I controlled. Every bridge burned, every ally turned foe. The weight of my choices, my arrogance, my mistakes, crashes down on me with a finality that leaves me breathless. I'm alone, truly alone, for the first time in my life, and the silence is deafening. Gone are the days of sipping champagne on a rooftop overlooking the city. Now, it's more about counting coins to make rent in a cramped, mold-scented apartment that's a far cry from the luxury I was used to. Every morning, I wake up to the reality of my new life. The stark contrast, a bitter pill to swallow. The glamour? A distant memory. While I'm scrimping and saving, Alex is out there living his best life. I see his face plastered across local magazines, tagged in social media posts from the hottest events in town. New York's most eligible bachelor, they call him. It stings, knowing he's thriving while I'm barely surviving. Trying to claw my way back up, I hit the job market hard. But it seems my reputation has beaten me to it. Every interview ends with that same, pitying look. My professional network, once a source of pride, is now a reminder of bridges burned. The whispers of my downfall have spread far and wide, closing doors I didn't even know I needed. In a moment of desperation, I confront Alex at a charity gala, hoping for some semblance of peace, a truce. I approach him, heart pounding, only to be met with a wall of ice. "You made your choices, Elena," he says, his voice devoid of any warmth. The finality in his tone cuts deeper than any legal document ever could. As if the rejection wasn't enough, the rumors about me spiral out of control. Each whisper, each pointed look, is a nail in the coffin of my social standing. The story of my infidelity and the spectacle of our divorce have become the stuff of local gossip, a cautionary tale of what not to do. And then, the bills start piling up. Notices for unpaid debts, loans I'd shrugged off, assuming Alex would handle them like he always did. The reality of my financial negligence hits me like a truck. I'm drowning in a sea of red, reminders of my careless past arriving in every mail drop. This chapter of my life is a far cry from the fairy tale I once lived. It's a daily struggle, a fight to rebuild from the ashes of my own making. The luxury, the parties, the carefree laughter, gone, replaced by the harsh reality of consequences. As I navigate this new existence, each day brings its own challenges, a constant battle to prove I'm more than my mistakes, even if the world seems determined to define me by them. As I sift through the remnants of a life once adorned with the sparkle of luxury, My hands linger on the cold metal and stones of my jewelry, the silky fabric of designer dresses I once wore with pride. Each piece, a memory of a past that feels like someone else's story. Selling them feels like stripping away layers of my old self, but desperation doesn't afford the luxury of sentimentality. The cash they bring in is a temporary lifeline, staving off the relentless tide of debts that threaten to engulf me. In the silence of my barren apartment, the weight of my choices settles in. There's no one to confide in, no sympathetic ear to hear my regrets. My reflections are a solitary affair, the echo of my thoughts a stark reminder of the isolation my actions have wrought. It's in these moments, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, that the full magnitude of my fall from grace hits hardest. The news of Alex's engagement is a jolt out of nowhere, a sharp sting amidst the dull ache of my new reality. He's moving on, building a future with someone respected and successful, someone not marred by scandal and poor choices. The knowledge adds a bitter layer to my already substantial pile of losses, a reminder of what I've thrown away. Attempts to reconnect with old friends prove futile. Doors that were once open to me are now closed, both literally and metaphorically. Rejection, or worse, the polite indifference I encounter, is a clear message. I am no longer part of their world. The realization that I am truly alone, without even the comfort of familiar faces, is a sobering one. The job I managed to secure is a stark departure from my previous life. Gone are the days of leisurely lunches and spontaneous shopping sprees. Now, my days are measured in the relentless routine of minimum wage labor, each day a stark reminder of the consequences of my actions. The work is mundane, the pay barely enough to cover the basics, but it's all I have. Seeing Alex and his fiancée at a restaurant one evening crystallizes my new reality. They are wrapped up in each other, a bubble of happiness I once thought would always include me. Their laughter, the way they lean into each other, it's a visual representation of my solitude. I'm an outsider looking in on a life I once took for granted, now irrevocably out of reach. This chapter of my life is one of hard lessons and harsh truths. The glittering facade of my previous existence has been stripped away, leaving me to face the consequences of my choices head-on. Each day is a struggle, a battle to find some semblance of peace with the person I've become. The journey is lonely, the path uncertain, but it's the one I must walk, step by weary step. Diving back into the dating scene felt like stepping onto a battlefield with no armor. Each attempt to connect, a stark reminder of the shadow my past casts over my present. Conversations that start with promise quickly turn sour, the curiosity in their eyes turning to judgment when my history comes to light. It's like I'm branded, marked by my mistakes, unable to escape the stigma of a scandal that clings to me like a second skin. Trying to forge new friendships feels just as futile. The social circles I once navigated with ease now seem impenetrable, my advances met with polite smiles that never reach wary eyes. It's clear they've heard the stories, formed their opinions, and there's no place for me among them. The loneliness is a constant companion, a shadow that follows me even in crowded rooms. Then, one day, an invitation arrives. Alex's wedding. My heart stops. It's clearly a mistake, a cruel twist of fate that has it landing in my mailbox. Holding it, I'm overwhelmed by a flood of memories, each one a reminder of the life we planned together, now just out of reach. The weight of my decisions, my betrayal, presses down on me, a tangible reminder of everything I've lost. On the day of the wedding, curiosity gets the better of me. I find myself walking past the venue, just a glimpse, I tell myself. The sight of the celebration, the sound of laughter and music drifting out, is a vivid contrast to the silence of my existence. I see him, Alex, happy and in love, a stark reminder of the void within me. I'm an outsider, looking in on a world that's no longer mine. In the aftermath, I throw myself into self-improvement, enrolling in classes and workshops. It's an attempt to start anew, to build something from the ashes of my former life. But each step forward is a struggle, my past a constant barrier to progress. The journey of reinvention is slow, marred by setbacks and reminders of the person I used to be, the choices I made. When images of Alex's honeymoon flood social media, it's like a punch to the gut. The happiness radiating from those pictures is a world away from the grim reality of my daily life. They're exploring exotic locales, basking in their love for each other, while I'm here, fighting for every inch of ground in a battle to redefine myself. Sitting in my modest apartment, the realization of what I've lost fully dawns on me. It's not just Alex, not just the material comforts and social standing. I've lost myself, the person I thought I was, the life I thought I'd have. Acknowledging that my downfall was of my own making doesn't bring relief. There's no solace in this understanding, only the bitter taste of regret. My choices have led me here, to this moment of introspection, and the path ahead is unclear, shrouded in the consequences of a past I can't undo. The journey forward is mine alone to make, a daunting prospect filled with uncertainty, but perhaps, in this solitude, there's a chance to find redemption, to rebuild not just my life. We were high school sweethearts, me and her. Went to the same college too. Got married young, at 20, because we thought we were each other's world. When I turned 23, we had our first kid, a girl. Times were tough, but we managed to crawl our way up to a decent life, middle class, you know? Things took a turn when my brother got divorced. It was a rough patch for him, so I did what family does, offered him our spare room. It was 2006, and he needed help. We were happy to, at least that's what I thought. Not long after, my wife and my brother started getting too close for comfort. They were always texting, chatting on the phone when he wasn't around. It felt off. I told her it bothered me, but she made it seem like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it just wouldn't go away. Then, it got to the point where they didn't even bother hiding it. That hit me hard. I mean, I was right there. But every time I brought it up, it was like I was the one in the wrong for even thinking it. I couldn't just stand by. One night, I checked her phone. The messages I found, they were beyond friendly. It felt like a punch to the gut. Everything inside me just broke. I had to do something. So, I called them out, sat them both down. They swore up and down it was just some stupid texts, nothing physical. I wanted to believe them, needed to, for the sake of our family. But that was the beginning of the end, really. From that moment, nothing was the same. They said it was nothing, but it sure as hell didn't feel like nothing to me. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through the TV channels, not really watching anything. My mind was elsewhere. My wife, Sarah, was upstairs, probably on her phone. My brother, Mike, had moved in with us a few months back. He was out, said he had some errands. Things had been weird lately. Sarah and Mike were getting too close for comfort, laughing too much, whispering. It bugged me. I decided to shake it off, thinking I was being paranoid. We've been together since high school. Sarah and we've been through so much to get here, to a good life with our kids. One day, everything changed. I found Sarah's phone on the kitchen table while she was showering. A message popped up, from Mike. Something inside me snapped. I opened the message. It was like getting punched in the gut. Sexting. Back and forth. My world crumbled right there. I waited until Mike got home. We need to talk. All of us, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah looked scared. Mike, defiant. Sitting in the living room, the air thick with tension, I threw the phone on the table. Explain this, I demanded. They exchanged glances, then the lies came. It's not what it looks like, Sarah started. Nothing physical happened, Mike added quickly. I wanted to scream, to throw them both out, but I thought of our daughter, the life we built. I'm trying to keep us together, I said, voice cracking. But this breaks me. They swore it would stop. I tried to believe them, for the sake of our family. We moved on, or so I thought. We even had another daughter. Life seemed to get back on track. Then, a small lie from Sarah reignited my suspicions. Pressing her, the truth came out slowly, like poison. More intimate than just texts, but they still denied going all the way. It felt like déjà vu, but worse. I was stuck. Tearing my family apart over something that happened years ago seemed insane. But living with the lie felt like dying slowly. I had to confront this, had to fight for some semblance of respect. If not for me, then for our daughters. So there we were. in the same living room where years of lies had unfolded, facing the ugly truth. My family, my whole life, teetering on the edge of a decision I never wanted to make. Last night was the breaking point. I was sitting on our bed, flipping through an old photo album. It's funny how pictures can bring back memories you thought were buried deep. That's when my wife walked in, her face all smiles until she saw what I was holding. Her smile vanished, and that's when I knew. I needed the truth, but I was scared of what it might be. I found this old picture of you and my brother at the lake, I said, holding up a photo. You two looked really close. She tried to brush it off, saying they were just having fun, but her voice was shaky. That's when I decided to push for more. There's something going on, isn't there? Between you and him? At first, she denied everything, but I could see it in her eyes, the guilt. It took hours, but finally, she broke down. She admitted to more than just friendly texts and calls. They had crossed lines I never thought possible. I felt like my heart stopped. It was like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Was it just texting? Tell me the truth. Her confession was like a punch to the gut. She talked about kissing, touching, more than I could bear to hear. My brother, my wife. How could they? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I just kept replaying their betrayal over and over in my head. By morning, I had made up my mind. I had to confront my brother. I called him, demanding answers. He tried to dodge the questions, his story full of holes and I don't remembers. It was clear they were both lying to me, not just now but for years. That's it. We're done. You and me, we're done. I told him, my voice cold, feeling nothing but emptiness inside. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with a crushing weight of sadness. It was over, but at what cost? My wife tried to explain, to say it was a one-time mistake, but how could I believe anything she said now? Every word felt like another lie. I swear it was just that one time, she pleaded, tears in her eyes. But the trust we had was shattered into a million pieces. I've made my decision. I can't look at either of them the same way again. My brother is out of my life for good, and as for my wife, I just don't know. The future we had, our plans, our dreams, it all feels like a distant memory now. Tonight, I'm sleeping in the guest room. It feels like the only place I can breathe, away from the lies and the betrayal. Tomorrow, I don't know what I'll do. But I know one thing. Life as I knew it is over. It was a Thursday morning, just like any other, until it wasn't. The air felt heavier, and the silence in the house was deafening. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee I had no intention of drinking. The events of the last few days replayed in my mind, each detail sharper than a knife's edge. My wife, the woman I had loved and built a life with for over 2 decades, sat across from me. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now held a different kind of gaze, one of guilt and desperation. I swear, it was over years ago. Can't we just move past this? Her voice was a mix of pleading and defiance. I wanted to believe her, part of me still did, but the truth was like a gaping wound, and her words were nothing more than a flimsy bandage. How can I trust anything you say? I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. Every time we talk, another lie comes out. She opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by my phone buzzing on the table. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize, but the content was unmistakable: pictures, dates, places, evidence of not one, but multiple encounters. My heart sank. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. I can't do this anymore, I said, standing up so quickly that my chair nearly toppled over. Her face went pale, the realization of what was happening dawning on her. I'm going to see a lawyer. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and hard conversations. Telling our daughters was the hardest part. Their confusion and hurt were palpable, a physical ache in the room with us. My family, her family, we let everyone know. The truth, ugly and raw, couldn't be hidden any longer. She moved her things to the basement, a temporary arrangement until something more permanent could be figured out. The house, once full of laughter and warmth, felt like a shell of its former self. But it was mine to keep, a small consolation in the wake of everything else. I made my decision. The marriage was over, and it was time to move forward, however daunting that path might seem. There was no going back, not after everything that had come to light. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too numerous. In the days that followed, I found strength I didn't know I had. The support from friends, family, and even strangers online was overwhelming. "You're making the right choice," they said. "You'll get through this." And for the first time in a long time, I started to believe it. As I looked around the now half-empty house, I realized that this wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a painful, difficult beginning, but a chance to build something new. For myself, for my daughters. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was resolved to walk it, one step at a time. No dramatic goodbyes, no tearful apologies. Just the quiet determination to rebuild, to find happiness again in the aftermath of betrayal. It was time to move forward, to close this chapter of my life and start writing a new one. Story number 2. I was feeding the baby when my phone beeped. It was a Facebook message from a name I didn't recognize. My heart sank the moment I read it. "Your husband has been seeing my wife." Just like that, my world stopped. I couldn't believe it. Only 2 weeks after our youngest was born in March 2021, while I was drowning in diapers and night feeds, he was with her. We'd been married for 8 years, had 2 sons. Our oldest was barely 2 when the youngest came along. My husband, before our first was born, promised he'd cut back on overnight work trips. He didn't. Those trips got more frequent, and the FaceTime calls we used to have stopped right after our first son was born. It made sense now. The early departures, late returns during visits to my parents. Always said it was work, but work didn't explain the distance. And then to find out she lived just 10 minutes from my parents' place. It was too much. I confronted him that night. He didn't deny it, didn't apologize. Just sat there, looking anywhere but at me. I remember asking, why? But all he said was, "I don't know." That was it. No explanation, no remorse. Nothing. The next day was a blur. I called my mom, tears streaming down my face, asking if we could come stay with them for a while. She didn't hesitate, of course, come home. Packing up, I tried to make sense of it all. How did we get here? How did I not see this coming? I thought back to the promises he made before our first son was born, how excited we were to be parents together. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, here I was, trying to figure out how to tell our oldest that we were going to stay with grandma and grandpa for a bit. It's funny, you know, how life throws these curveballs. One minute you're planning birthdays and holidays, and the next, you're packing bags, shielding your kids from a reality they're too young to understand. I was angry, heartbroken, but most of all, I was determined to protect them, to make sure they knew they were loved, no matter what. Driving to my parents' house, I replayed the last few months in my head, his late nights, the missed calls, the unexplained absences. It all added up now, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. It was going to be a long road ahead, but at that moment, all I could think about was getting to my parents, getting my boys to safety. That was all that mattered. I remember the day it all came crashing down. It was an ordinary Thursday, but by the end of it, my whole world had shifted. I was at work, buried in paperwork, when my phone lit up with a message from her. "We need to talk." That's when I knew it was over. She had found out about the affair. The weeks leading up to that moment were tense. I kept starting arguments over nothing, blaming her for being depressed all the time. She was struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety, stuff she got after our youngest was born. It was tough, seeing her like that, and I guess I didn't handle it well. I threw around the word, divorce, like it was nothing, trying to scare her into feeling something, anything. Then came the call from the app's husband. He told her everything. I wasn't there when it happened, but I can imagine the look on her face, the betrayal, the hurt. I expected screaming, crying, maybe even things thrown my way when I got home. But there was none of that. Just silence and a look that cut deeper than any words could. "I want a divorce," I said, finally, when the silence got too much. "We need to sell the house." I thought I'd feel relieved, saying it out loud, but I felt empty. It was like declaring the end of something I wasn't even sure I wanted to end, but it was too late for doubts. The next thing I knew, she was gone, moved in with her parents, taking the kids with her. Her parents. They never liked me much, even less now. Banned from their house, cut off from my sons. It hit me then. the gravity of what I'd done. In those first few nights alone, the house felt eerily silent. No kids laughing, no late-night talks, no sounds of life. Just me and my thoughts, replaying every argument, every harsh word, every moment that led us here. I tried to justify it to myself that maybe this was for the best, that we were too different, too broken to fix. But deep down, I knew I was the one who broke us. I pushed her away when she needed me the most, chased after something I thought I wanted, and ended up losing everything that mattered. Sitting in that empty house, I realized the cost of my actions. I lost my family, my home, and any respect they had for me. It's one thing to make a mistake. It's another to watch it tear everything you love apart. The moment I heard she was leaving, part of me felt like it was the right thing. She knew about me and the AP, even guessed why AP was with me. She thought it was for a green card. Maybe it was true, maybe not, but that wasn't the point anymore. She was gone, with our kids, and suddenly, everything felt too real. She was pregnant when she left. I told her I couldn't handle more child support, suggested she get an abortion. I know how cold that sounds now. She didn't listen, of course. Went ahead with the pregnancy. I didn't ask about it, didn't want to know. It was easier to pretend it was all just happening to someone else. But then the divorce papers came in November. She wanted everything. Sole custody, the house, nearly everything we owned. It hit me then. This was real. She was really trying to take my kids away from me. And the house? I was on the deed, but not the mortgage. She said that since she was paying, she should keep it. That didn't sit right with me. So, I fought back. Told my lawyer I wanted half the house and joint custody. I mean, they're my kids too, right? But money was tight, and she made it sound like I was just after her cash. Maybe part of me was, but it was more than that. It was about not losing everything. Then I dropped the bomb about wanting a paternity test for our second son. I don't know why I said it. Maybe to hurt her, maybe to delay things, maybe because I was scared he really wasn't mine. It was a mess. We didn't talk directly much after that. Everything went through lawyers. She stayed with her parents, who wouldn't even let me near the place. I missed my sons but didn't know how to fix any of it. I wanted to see them, but every attempt felt like walking into a storm. Looking back, I see how messed up it was. Contesting the divorce, the custody, the house, demanding a paternity test, it was all just reactions, not actions. I was trying to hold on to something, anything, without really understanding what I was fighting for or why. It wasn't just about money or pride. It was about not wanting to be the bad guy she saw me as, even if I wasn't sure I wasn't that guy. It was all a mess, a huge mess that I helped create. And as everything spiraled, I kept thinking, what am I doing? But by then, it felt too late to stop, too late to say, I'm sorry, too late to make any of it right. So, I kept pushing, kept fighting, because I didn't know what else to do. I was pacing in the living room when I decided to call her. The court date was coming up, and everything inside me was a mix of dread and desperation. Maybe she'll listen, I thought. Maybe she'll see I'm trying to change. So, I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. Hey, it's me. I finally got out. I've been thinking a lot about us, about the kids. They need us both. You know? There was silence on the other end, and then she spoke, her voice cold. Really? Now you think about the kids? What about when you left us for weeks, when you chose her over your own family? I tried to explain, to tell her that I messed up, but that I still loved our sons. It sounded hollow even to me. I do love them, I insisted. I want to make things right. She laughed, a sad, bitter sound. Make things right? You want to make things right after everything you've done? I could hear the anger in her voice, the pain. I wanted to say something, anything that could fix it, but the words wouldn't come. I know I haven't been there, I admit it, but I want to try, for the kids. That's just it, isn't it? You always say you want to try, but when have you ever actually been there for them? For me? Her voice was rising now. You weren't there when they needed you, and you're not here now. You're just scared of being alone. She was right. Since she left, the silence of the house was deafening. I missed the noise, the chaos, even the arguments. But more than that, I missed them, my family. And now, faced with the reality of losing everything, I was reaching out, not for them, but for myself. "We'll see in court," she said finally, her voice steady. "I'm done talking to you." The line went dead, and I stood there, phone in hand, feeling more isolated than ever. I had tried to reach out, to bridge the gap between us, but all I had done was push her further away. In the days leading up to the court date, I realized that my attempts at reconciliation were too little, too late. She was determined, focused on protecting our sons, on securing a future for them that didn't include me in the same way it had before. Standing in court, watching her fight for them, for everything we had built together, I knew she was right. I had been neglectful, manipulative, and now I was paying the price. She was strong, unwavering in her resolve, and as the judge listened to our cases, I couldn't help but admire her. She wasn't just fighting against me, she was fighting for something greater, for the well-being of our sons, for a life free of deceit and betrayal. And as the proceedings went on, I realized that this wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of her new life, a life she was determined to make better for our children, no matter what it took. The chapter of US was closing, but she was just starting to write a new one, a better one, for herself and our sons. And as I stood there, watching her stand firm in her convictions, I knew that this was how it had to be. For the first time, I saw clearly the consequences of my actions, and I knew that she was doing exactly